Though I stated that file sorting was one of the 6 steps in an effective editing workflow, it's really not so much a step, but a principle and skill that we should both be aware of and use throughout the entire editing process. We start editing by properly organizing and naming our files, but as you edit, you tend to add more and more files to the project. Eventually, your project becomes so large and such a mess that you can never find anything accurately if you didn't properly manage your files along the way. The other reason we cover this skill at this time is because as a teacher, I've learned that not all students understand how files on a computer actually work, and this leads to a lot of confusion on how to use an editing program. So, for the rest of this video, we're discussing the difference between using files on Google Drive and using files on your computer, including understanding the Finder/File Explorer on a Mac and PC, and how to create folders and organize files inside of them. If you are a student or used to using primarily Chromebooks, this video is for you. If you already know these concepts and could easily navigate them on your own, feel free to move on to the next video. That being said, let's jump on into it. Chromebooks naturally sync everything on your computer with the Google Drive. Because of this, students often mistake that Google Drive files are already on your computer and are able to use at any given time. Unfortunately, this just isn't true. In truth, Google Drive is what we call a cloud service. Cloud services are remote locations we can send files to be stored on our behalf. In Google's case, they own warehouses upon warehouses of computers solely built to store your files in everybody else's Google Drive, Google Photos, YouTube videos, and so on. We send them our files through the internet, and usually that means that Google Drive file doesn't actually exist on your computer. So, if you want to view it, you have to have the internet and ask Google Drive to let you view it. And if you want to use it, such as if you want to use a video file or picture to edit a video for a class, you have to download the file from Google Drive onto your computer. There are other cloud services, such as Cloud Photos from Apple, Box, OneDrive, and so on. All these services work the same as Google Drive. So, let's say you download a file onto your computer. What then? Once a file is on your computer, you can find it through an app called the Finder if you're using a Mac, or a File Explorer if you're using a PC. These apps show you all the files existing on your physical computer, and each of them is saved to only one specific location. So, if you save a file to Documents, it is found in Documents until you drag and drop it or copy and paste it somewhere else. Either way, files in these locations can be dragged and dropped into a program like Premiere or Photoshop, while files on the Google Drive cannot. One thing that we'll be using throughout our editing is creating folders. Whether in Mac or in PC, if you right-click on a file inside the Finder, you can select options such as Copy, Send to Trash/Delete, and so on. If you right-click on the blank space in the Finder, you can create a folder in which you can organize your projects and files. This will be important as we create videos, so that we can store all of our media in the right places without clogging up the desktop. One loose file too many, and suddenly our desktop is a treasure trove of lost and forgotten files. Lastly, you need to understand how SD cards and flash drives work. They're essentially like little mini computers, which attach to your laptop or desktop once plugged in. Once connected to the computer, whatever information is on the SD card is now available to the computer. And be careful though, because if you start a project with something that exists on your SD card, such as putting footage from your SD card into a project on Premiere, your computer expects it to be there and available the next time you want to open the project. If you try to open the project without the SD card available, then you'll run into problems and the Premiere project won't know where to find the files. At that point, you just need to close out of Premiere without saving and then open it back up once you've plugged in the SD card. With that in mind, you have two choices. Either leave your footage and files on your SD card or move the files onto your computer. By keeping everything on the SD card, you have the option to use your files on your SD card in any computer at any location. You'll also spend less time transferring files off the SD card and save space on your computer's internal storage. This is particularly important for student computers, where we have many students working on one machine. If too many students put too many files on the computer, eventually it becomes full and you find yourself unable to use the computer. The downside of this approach is that you fill up your SD card faster and you run the risk of losing all your files if you lose your SD card. As such, I recommend keeping your footage on your SD card for short-term projects, such as class assignments, and moving your footage onto your computer if your projects are long-term or videos that are very important to you, or if it's filming that you just couldn't refilm even if you wanted to. Lastly, as an aside, you would be interested to know that phones actually act similar to SD cards. They're technically their own computer, but if you plug them in, you can transfer files off and on them just like you would with an SD card. Alternatively, you can upload and download files to cloud storages such as Google Drive, which is probably the easiest method for transferring files from your phone to your computer. If you still need to do this in preparation for editing your own project, I would recommend to do so now. File transfers on a phone for larger files such as videos can take a very long time depending on your internet speed. And I'll tell you what, internet speeds at the school are not very fast. So, if you're trying to transfer your footage from your phone to your computer on the same day that you plan to edit, it may not go over very well for you. To wrap up, file storage happens in many locations, whether it be in cloud storage like Google Drive, on your computer, on an SD card, or even on your phone. Each of these locations are separate from one another, but can be connected through wires or through the internet. Each location has its benefits for storing through it, and it's important to leave time for downloading, uploading, or transferring files in general, as it can sometimes be a pretty lengthy process. Now that you have this background information, you're ready to start working on and preparing files for your first editing project.